The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Joining me today is my good friend, Professor Matt Sinkowitz. I have him on the show quite often. Professor Matt, before we go any further, how are you, man?
Personally, I'm great. I've got a new baby that we just brought home, and I'm doing great personally. Other than that, it's hasn't been the best week for a lot of people, a lot of Americans, and it's been a particularly trying week, obviously, for Jewish Americans, Jews across the world, not just, but particularly. So I'm very personally, it's like a mixed week. I mean, my personal. I cannot tell you that I'm not doing great because I am personally, but man, it has been a tough week. Yeah. Both because of course what happened, but also just the political landscape of I mean, just the way that tragedy gets twisted these days. No matter who it happens to, it gets twisted. In this case, it was a community that I'm a part of. Yeah. And I mean, you can't say good and I can't say bad. It's that kind of week.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I know I've done this privately, but I want to do it on the air. Congratulations on the new baby. I mean, that is
thank you.
You're right there with me. I'm 9 months ahead of you. My baby is 9 months and you have a week old. So I do want to extend some concern to you so that you get rest.
Mostly to my wife.
Yes, because there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights, and but you already know that this is not your first time at the rodeo. But I also want to extend my condolences to you. And while people may not understand why I would do that, I want to frame it like this: the shooting at Mother Emanuel AME. That is my community. Right. And you framed it as that's your community. That's literally where I am on Wednesday nights. I'm in Bible study just like they are at a historically black church. And our church is 115 years old, almost like Mother Emanuel. And so when Dylan Roof did what he did to our community, it shook our entire community. So even though I don't live there, I felt that. And so that's why I want to extend my condolences to you and the entire community that you're a part of.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's right. Obviously, the people who are proximate to it, it's a whole other level of grief and trauma. But I mean, we are a community. Just the way you describe it, I didn't find out about the events in Pittsburgh until later because it's the Jewish Sabbath and my phone's not on Saturday. So this is something that. Every time we set foot in our shoals forever now, we're going to think about this. And I mean, community obviously is more than just the people directly around you. There's a belonging that's bigger than that. And I totally relate to what you're saying, and I think the connection is exactly right.
So I want to offer my platform here to you, and I want to yield to you in anything about this that you want to talk about, any direction that you want to talk about it, because as much as I probably could navigate this, you're all the more better to do this. So where are you in terms of everything that's happening, whether it be political, whether just the sheer hatred and anti-Semitism that showed its ugly face on Saturday? What say you?
Yeah, I mean the part, the fact that this happened, of course, tragedies happen, and can I say, is it shocking? Of course, it's shocking, but we know bad things will happen. The actual existence of it, as terrible as it is something is one level. The other level is the way in which it has there has been a continual sort of development of rhetoric and media strategies being employed by people going all the way up to the president that are not to blame for this in the direct sense. Obviously, whoever pulls the trigger is to blame for it. But to pretend that a blind eye hasn't been turned towards the sorts of anti-Semitic conspiracy stuff that this heinous person acted on. I mean, to say that hasn't gone all the way to the top to Donald Trump would be obviously false. I mean, we've got this legacy of his campaign, of the Trump campaign, which in included everything ranging from overt signaling of anti-Semitism, what I would call not even dog whistling, putting Stars of David and memes to denote conspiracy, to the sort of general tolerance for this sort of supposedly ironic anti-Semitism on the alt-right from the Milos of the world, the people who, it's funny to sort of, put forth anti-Jewish stuff, and we saw this all over the place. Sort of blend of like honest, complete hatred and this pseudo-ironic hatred that we saw in people responding to journalists throughout the Trump campaign, and since then, Jewish journalists being attacked over and over. I mean, all those things were there. That was been there for a long time. I had this fear. We all had this fear coming. You see it come, and then you see the response, the actual enactment of pure anti-Semitism, and you see the most powerful people in the United States finding ways to slither out from under, describing it for what it was. Yeah. Right. And so, the actual response from Trump himself, not that interesting to me. He's clearly got other people doing extremely dirty work for him. Right. Kellyanne Conway's response yesterday, where she described the attack on Tree of Life as an attack on religiosity in the United States. Come on. It is so profoundly offensive, right? And she compared it also. I mean, she talked about Dylan Roof, right? She sort of took these two events, one of which clearly targeted black people because they were black, right, and one of which clearly targeted Jewish people because they were Jewish, and turned it into a war on white Christians, right? I mean, that is so infuriating. I mean, my God, I'm so glad I wasn't getting my blood pressure checked when I mean, right now it's hard to even talk about it. It's so profoundly, it's not just offensive, it's dangerous. Right. I mean, it is completely, it says, okay, yeah, let's worry about this thing that isn't the issue. I mean, basically she turned this into the war on Christmas. Right. Right. This is some general broader problem. I mean, no, this is about whatever. This is about white supremacy. This is about neo-Nazis. Right. And this is about people who have proven willingness to kill. Right. And yet it's going to be, I mean, the idea that please, Ben, sorry. No, by all means, like I said, this is, do whatever you want to in this time that we have. But I just have to say, you nailed that. This is, they turned a clearly hate-filled anti-Semitic attack on Jewish people because they are Jewish into the war on Christmas. And they did the same thing with Dylan Roof. I remember they brought some people on there and say that was an attack on Christianity. No, they happened to be Christian, because if they had been black and something else, they still would have gotten killed by Dylan Roof. He probably would have felt better if he could have killed black Muslims versus black Christians. And so they just have this uncanny knack of making a bad situation even worse by refusing to confront it for what it is. It was an anti-Semitic attack in a week full of white supremacist attacks on our country. Yeah. Go for it, man. It's all yours. I mean, as you say, he went to a synagogue because that's where there are Jews. Right. Right. I mean, and if you look at the rhetoric of this guy, I don't want to say his name, of ours, then you see he has a very clear problem with Jews that has absolutely nothing to do with theology, right? He hates Jewish support for refugees and these things, which of course you could tie to some, but that's got nothing to do with people of faith. It's completely absurd, right? It's this sort of standard alt-right narrative whereby the black and brown people do sort of the groundwork, and the Jews pull the strings to take out the white Christians or whatever this ridiculous narrative is. Right. Couldn't have less to do with anything about religion, and everybody knows this, but the fact is, right, that it is fairly clear that the very slim, winning minority electorate that the Trump coalition has to include, people who believe this stuff. Right. Right. If he's going to win re-election, he cannot alienate the people who have these opinions about Jews and brown people and black people and whatever else. And so, if you're not going to confront it, you have to explain it, and you explain it by being a broader general attack on faith in America. She blamed it on comedians.
Yeah.
Which is like,
yeah.
I mean, just unbelievable. So there's that, right? That happens, which is infuriating. Like I said, I get worked up. It's hard to talk about. And I figured that was it for the day, partially because, and I think somewhat correctly, I figured the news cycle will just turn, and it kind of already has. We've already got Trump out there talking about stopping birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
Forget that for the time being, right? But I figured we were probably done with it. And then last night we get that Pence rally with whoever it was, Epstein, the candidate in Michigan, and he, in order to do a benediction or whatever, the beginning of this of the rally, he brings out quote unquote Rabbi Loren-Jacobs, and so this is really tricky for me. So Loren-Jacobs is a Messianic Jew. That's how he describes himself. Fine by me. I would call him a Christian with Jewish heritage or something like that. He can call himself whatever he wants, though. That really doesn't bother me. But that's about his beliefs, right? He believes in what he believes. I think the general idea is that he follows some aspects of Jewish law, but also believes that Jesus is the Messiah. Good, fine. I mean, I am somebody who's very committed to the idea of personal religious belief being what it is. However, he's brought out specifically because of this attack in Pittsburgh on Jewish people, not on Messianic Jews, not on Christians, but on Jews, right? And he gives this opening benediction in which he references Jesus and connects that in sort of the rhetoric to the attack in Pittsburgh, sort of praying for these people, right? And this is, it is such an affront. It is such a. It would be one thing if it was just tactless, but it's strategically tactless.
Right.
So Jews, the people in who go to the Tree of Life Synagogue, overwhelmingly people who belong to religious Jewish institutions in America, do not consider Messianic Jews part of their community. Doesn't mean they hate them. Doesn't mean they dislike them even necessarily. It's just not part of their community. It's a different tradition, and it's one that there's a tough relationship with because it seemed to be something that tries to pull your children away kind of thing. But it in no way reflects or represents the people of that synagogue who were killed. Right. And so again, I want to be clear. Whatever Jacobs believes, good for him. That's fine. I hope that it brings him happiness and peace and whatever. It has nothing to do with the people of Tree of Life or their people who are mourning for them, their children, and so to bring him on, the first thing is to say, like, well, why didn't they get an actual rabbi? Well, it could have been a number of reasons. Could have been hard to get one, or this is the one they wanted. Right. And to me, I go to the sort of next step of this, which is to what extent, in what ways do the Pences of the world actually care about Jews? Right? And they care about them in a way, right? But in a way that's worse than not being cared for at all, right? They care about Jews for two reasons, and they both have to do with Israel, right? One, that they tend, the alt-right world at least tends to have this, they like this sort of distorted version of Israel, which frankly a lot of the Israeli government also holds by, so that's complicated, but they sort of look at Israel as this ethno-national state to mirror America on. Yeah. Right. A place that all, so they sort of like, they see it as a place where we're sort of striving for a purity. We can get into that another time of like ethno-national purity, which is a messed up understanding of any country and a nightmare version of Israel. But whatever, they see that and they actually like it. Right. And the other thing is they like the idea of Jews being sent off there to die in the apocalypse that comes when Jesus returns. Right. Those are the two connections. Those are two reasons that they like Jews so much. Right. So they tend to like the sort of their vision of Israel. And two, they like the idea that the Jews fit into the story of Jesus returning based on like Kirk Cameron movies or whatever the hell it is. If you put those together. Yeah, please. I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but where would you put the alt-right's hatred for Islam? Would you mix that in there, or even if not Islam directly? But I would call it a bonus. Like, I would say that it's like right. They hate Islam. They have it's incredible Islamophobia, and they see they look at Israel as a place that fights against Hamas and fights against Hezbollah. And I think that that's a bonus. I think that they can fit a sort of a centralized notion of Jews as ethno warriors into their worldview very nicely.
Right.
But they cannot fit in Jews supporting refugees from Syria being resettled, in places of safety, which reflects
exactly.
Right. I mean, which reflects American Jewry overwhelmingly much better than the ethno warrior version. Right. I mean, we don't need to go through poll numbers, but Jewish support for Muslims is Muslim refugees is disproportionately high. Certainly. Anyway, there's good Jews and bad Jews in these people's lives, in these people's worldviews, and this rabbi, quote unquote, that they bring in, right? He is somebody who I guess they sort of say is Jewish, but overtly believes in this messianic apocalyptic end for the Jewish people. Right. This is the guy that they bring in. And somebody who sort of overtly believes that the people who died in the synagogue are going to hell and burning for not believing in Jesus. But, sort of, I guess, in a way, to the Pence world, provides some sort of cover. But more than anything else, it appeals to the idea, to certain extreme perspectives, that the relationship of Pence to the Jews is not a relationship to, the ones who are supporting refugee resettlement
right.
and are striving for peace. It's a connection to that sort of apocalyptic vision of Israel, or maybe the ethno-warrior vision of Israel, or whatever the case might be. Which you add that with the fact.
Finish that thought. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you just add that to the very basic level of offense that most people would take to having somebody who does not represent the beliefs of the people being honored.
Right.
Right. I mean, and to be clear, it would be, you could have a priest and a rabbi and an imam do an opening. That would be fine. But you choose one person who calls himself a rabbi, and it's somebody who thinks the people who died at the synagogue are going to hell. Yeah. The message is like, it's too much.
It is offensive. I mean, it would absolutely be like someone who believed the people of Mother Emanuel AME were all going to hell because they weren't X, Y, or Z, right? It's that offensive. And I think it's like getting a black person up at the memorial service for a Mother Emanuel AME, and not only a black person who believes that all of those victims are going to hell, but also believes politically that everything that they fight for was crap anyway. So it's like a dual insult that was brought down on you on your community by the highest powers in this country. Like the highest office in this country did this to the Jewish people of this country. And I wonder before, and I want you to just continue on your same train of thought, but I wonder, is this resonating with the community here, the way it's resonating with you? Are there other people who are just as upset about this as you?
Oh, I mean, so, you never want to speak monolithically about a community, right? And,
right.
Certainly the Jewish community fits into that. But, there's an overwhelming furor about it. I mean, I can talk about the exceptions, but I'm happy to talk about the exceptions. I mean, I will say this. This is where I get a little bit nervous about this, because I'm saying most, and I don't have any data, but this is all anecdotal, but most American Jews have a really bad reaction to Messianic Jews. Mm-hmm. It's just a gut reaction that most of us have. Again, I can't prove that, but I'm very confident in saying it. Well, these are people who claimed.
Let's dig. We don't have to dig in there, but I think we should discuss this here, because I'm Christian, you're Jewish, and anytime we get together, besides just hanging out, we do talk religion, and we talk the differences in our belief systems, and where we both kind of, I don't say it's a hard line, but we recognize the very big difference between our faiths, but simultaneously, it's like we both recognize our space and autonomy to worship the way that we want to worship and believe what we want to believe without, and it helps on my end of the equation. This is where my end of the equation actually helps us get along better, is that, I am not, I don't believe in this relationship with the Jewish community based on the apocalyptic end. Like my friendship with you is certainly not based on my hopes that all the Jews will be gathered in Israel and the Armageddon will come and the apocalypse will take place. To me, that has to be one of the most offensive parts of this perverse attention, because I don't call it a relationship. It's the perverse attention that evangelicals give to Israel. They pretend as though they love, and I use the word Israel specifically there, not the Jewish people, because it's not even attention and love and affection for the Jewish people. No. It's an attention towards Israel for apocalyptic purposes. And very few people are going to discuss that. Very few people are going to discuss that the real reason you have people like John Hagee, who constantly obsesses over Israel, has absolutely nothing to do with the concern of Jewish people. So I think that helps our relationship, that I absolutely don't come from that tradition of Christianity, because I see, like you do, that tradition in Christianity is one that is both problematic theologically, but it's also problematic politically for us in the here and now. Like, it is literally a problem for most of what you fight for and most of what I fight for. But I brought that up because, there's so many different variations of faith, particularly in the Christian faith and in any faith, but we're really talking about a branch of Christianity that is I was going to say violent, but it really does lead to the type of violence that we saw on Saturday, and yet this is the type of Christianity that is being promoted to comfort. I mean, this is the hypocrisy is so. I mean, it's unbearable.
Yeah, I mean, you can get two choices, right? So you can call using a messianic rabbi in that context. You could be ignorance, I guess, like you literally can't do more than like a look in the phone book, right? Google, and you just go with that, or it's a message, right? And so you read it as a message, and the message that gets sent to most, again, not every American Jew, but when Messianic Jews come up, it's generally in the context of, I'll put it this way, the gut reaction a lot of people have to somebody like this Rabbi Loren-Jacob is that this is a group that tends to prey on Jews who are either less knowledgeable about their traditions or are going through very difficult times or have some other reason to be vulnerable. Now, that may or may not be entirely true, but that's certainly the impression that takes place. At the very least, the way in which, it feels extremely appropriative, to have somebody who sort of tries to use the language, dresses in the clothes, and yet denies the most fundamental sort of aspects of Judaism. I mean, there is a sense in which you can just say, you can make up your own religion, right? You're not bound by other people's. But when you are speaking in relation to a group of people, right, then it'd be one thing if a priest came up and gave a talk wearing a collar. Right, it would be very clear, and it would be right on the table where the sort of belief differences are, and that priest could talk about, the tragedy of any loss of life and whatever else. You put somebody up there wearing a Jewish prayer shawl, right, and he starts talking, and then all of a sudden he starts talking about Jesus, and then you say, oh, wait a minute. This guy is sort of up there. He's dressed to comfort, and he's telling me I'm going to hell. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is, and if I think that's enough of an understanding to make people. I feel like that should work. Yeah. Right. Just to get across the idea. And again, in his own congregation, he can dress however he wants. It's totally fine. But you set it up in that context where specifically anybody in their right mind sees somebody called Rabbi stand up a couple of days after such a tragedy, hears him start talking about the tragedy. You assume this person is there to comfort those people who are most directly affected by the tragedy. Yeah. And then what is he saying in his words? He's telling you're going to hell. That's the comfort that he's offering, dressed in your clothes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the most simple. That's the clearest way. You're right. That's the clearest way to understand this. This really has nothing to do with the differences between the faiths but the fact that they put up someone to represent you who actually is condemning you to hell, that's disgusting.
And it goes to exactly what you were saying, the Israel thing. I mean, look, I wish that we didn't have to bring Israel into the conversation. I really do.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I wanted in the conversation when this happened. On Saturday, when I heard about this, well, my first thought would be, oh, well, here's a bunch of conspiracy theories that it's a false flag and the Israelis did it. That was my first, let's keep that out of that. And then, you would hope that people would just keep their respect and sort of not drag this into exactly what it became.
Yeah.
But when, it's not just up there saying, these people who died are being sent to hell because they didn't believe in Jesus. He's not saying those words, but the implication is clear. But he's also clearly what makes him a Jew worth respecting in that world is that he shares the apocalyptic narrative.
Yeah.
Right. That he shares. So he is the one who is the closest thing to being a Jew who can overtly place us as props in the radical evangelical story.
Yeah. I don't mean to laugh, but it just dawned on me who would be analogous here. It would be like Candace Owens getting up to speak at Mother Emanuel AME's all the different memorial services there. That's what this would be like, and in such an insulting way. Someone who's specifically there to lure people away, like she's a prop. And in this case, the Messianic rabbi was a prop, and he was a prop being used by people whose relationship with the Jewish people is predicated on some pretty horrific stuff once you unpack their true relationship. That's one of the things that bothers me so much, is just how pervasive it is, how difficult it is, even in our political conversation here in the United States, that the American right actually loves Israel or loves Jewish people. And I'm using those interchangeably, but they carry very different meanings when you talk about them specifically.
They don't love Jewish people.
Exactly.
In no way.
Exactly. But it gets presented as though it's a love for Jewish people, when in actuality it is a very twisted hatred at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, and you pointed out, it's a weird multi-layered hatred, right? Because it's like, oh, good, if we support Israel, and this is in the minds of the sort of white supremacists that you're talking, supporting Israel to them lets them hate Muslims extra now and Jews extra later.
Yes, exactly.
Right now, they get to join Bibi Netanyahu's fight against terrorism, right? Which there is real terrorism, and then there are other things that he calls or implies are terrorist, which it's a much longer story,
right?
But they get to be in that now, right? They get to be on the side fighting against the Muslims now, and then when the time comes, right, or at least in their head, as they fast forward into this apocalyptic vision, eventually they get to see all the Jews die too, right? So it's like a twofer, right? It's like a domino. It's like perfect. It's a perfect white supremacist story,
right?
I mean, it's really too good. And I mean, I don't really want to go down this path too far, but of course, the Naftali Bennett's, the Israeli politician Naftali Bennett or Benjamin Netanyahu, these people are at the very least happy to be an accomplice for this.
Right. We've talked about that. We've talked about that at length. The rationale behind it is fascinating. But go ahead. I mean, go as far as you want to go with it, and then we'll go no further.
Yeah, I want to rewind just for 1 second, because I do, so I said it first. I was trying to remember. It's all very emotional. I mean, it has to be very emotional. But so I was thinking, that the first thing that really got me really upset was the Conway. This is an attack on religiosity, but that's letting Trump off the hook for his tweet at some point. I don't have it in front of me, but where he said, "This looks like an act of anti-Semitism." Good, right? I mean, like he's looking at the sky and saying it's blue, but fine, at least it's accurate. And then his next line is something along the lines of, and you can look it up, who nobody would have thought this still existed. Right? Which anybody, I mean, for one, just the idea that any sort of hatred goes away,
right,
is pretty foolish, right? It'd be the first one ever to disappear without the people disappearing with it. So that's the one. But two, I mean, the disingenuousness of pretending that we haven't seen. I mean, the statistics are clear. The Anti-Defamation League does them. The FBI does them. Quibble with the number here or there. It's clear that anti-Semitism in the United States has been ever present and by many metrics increasing. But even to suggest the possibility, that we were past anti-Semitism, right? And it goes back to the same sort of post-racism kind of logic, right?
Right.
That is extremely politically important now. Issues of affirmative action, whatever else, pretending that these things that have plagued society for millennia can just go away and act surprised when they pop back up. So you can just say that was an aberration. Right. When he says you would be surprised this is still around, that's a setup for sort of saying now it's gone again.
Right.
Right. When it was never gone. And of course, his campaign played on it. And I don't need to rehash all of that. I mean, look, he is who he is and he says a bunch of nonsense. But he was expressing there, I think, a fairly common thought that the United States was somehow past anti-Semitism. It's a thought that a lot of American Jews have been very happy to believe, because it's reassuring and it's better to feel like you're not a target of hate. But to put that into to act as though this was a complete surprise, even if he hadn't done all of the things, retweeting the neo-Nazis, having his Fredo dumb son retweet the neo-Nazis and whatever else. Even if he hadn't done that, pretending that anti-Semitism had disappeared would be bad enough. With all of that, I mean, I guess I just felt guilty for a minute. I didn't totally drag that one through the whatever this is before moving on.
No. We give him plenty of dragging here, and he deserves every bit of it. But I like that. I like that you point out that nuance, right? This idea that the idea that he would even float a post anti-Semitism world is as fiction as a post-racist society, especially when he capitalized on that. The Republicans are still capitalizing on it. I'm on my timeline and I see a picture of a Jewish candidate grabbing hold of money. I just retweeted it as you were talking, because I was looking for that Donald Trump tweet, and I'm like they're literally thriving off of this. There are communities that thrive off of this. They have self-sustaining communities where they have their own system of reward, where they're insulated. They don't need approval from outside of their normal circles. And yet they're getting tacit approval and support from the highest office in our land. And he then says that, he's surprised that this is still a thing. Well, we know it's a game. We know that it's a game for him, and it's an electoral strategy. More specifically, it is an electoral strategy for Donald Trump, and it has become a political strategy, revitalized, because I'm sure at one time in American history it was again like, this is making America great again, taking us right back to the time where these could be viable political strategies. White supremacy, anti-Semitism are viable political strategies because it took Donald Trump all the way to the White House.
And I guess, this is the most uncomfortable aspect of it, but if we're being honest and having an honest conversation, it needs to come in. The political strategy as it relates to Jews is clearly twofold from Trump, right? On the one hand, you get the enabling and turning your a blind eye towards fairly overt anti-Semitism. Everybody, the last ad that he ran before the campaign with Yellen and Blank Fine, Soros, talking about globalists, right? So you just engage in the most ugly, alt-right, old school anti-Semitism. But on the same time, and this does alienate the vast majority of American Jews. Every poll will tell you that, right? But the other part of the electoral strategy is to just take all of your remaining Jewish energy and fillet Benjamin Netanyahu with it, right? And do everything that the fringe Israeli right wants you to do, because there is a minority but not unpowerful segment of the American Jewish world, which will just fall back on sort of this sort of blind support of reactionary elements in Israel. And so, on the one hand, you enable sort of mainstream anti-Semitism. On the other, you move the embassy, and you say all the right things. And you appoint your idiot son-in-law who couldn't find Ramallah on a map to go be the Middle East peace envoy. And sort of you let David Friedman, the ambassador to Israel, who he's a settlement advocate. You appoint him. And so you play sort of these two sides, right? You let the white supremacists get all of their kicks out of their anti-Semitic memes and whatever else, and then you appease a very small part of sort of overall Jewish world, but a powerful and committed part of the Jewish world by being as quote unquote good to Israel as you possibly can, right? And as a result, you get, again, it's a small percentage in terms of the population of American Jews, but a lot of the most politically engaged and active people are people who are very much concerned with sort of the Israeli agenda, the right-wing Israeli agenda, and so he appeases those people with one hand. He appeases the anti-Semites on the left, and the vast majority of American Jews end up in a pretty I don't know. In a position where, of course, you don't expect there to be massacres necessarily, but one in which you do not feel represented, we'll put it that way, and do not feel secure.
Wow. I mean, there's this may sound cliche, but there's so many layers to this. This complex relationship, and actually, I want to take that word back. This complex fixation that the American right and anti-Semites in America, right-wing, white supremacy, this relationship that they are able, and I still want to take that word off the table, this fixation that they have with Israel that gives them the appearance to be concerned with Jewish people, which is ultimately to the detriment of Jewish people, particularly in the long run, if you believe in the apocalyptic view of this. And yet it allows them the cover to pull off what they did with the Messianic Rabbi who does not represent your community, but stood there as a representative of your community in the worst anti-Semitic attack in, I believe it was in American history, period. I believe that's what I read.
You're talking about, yes. If you're talking about number of killed and injured, then it does not. I mean, as records are kept, there's nothing on record worse than that.
Yeah, that's my hesitation in it.
Thank God. But who knows, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, I'm just getting a little bit, it's really, no, I don't know.
it's one of those, I trust me, Matt, if the exasperation that I hear in your voice, when you put it into context, about everything that's been compounded on top of it, it's not, it's the mourning, the tragedy itself is enough, as if that wasn't hard enough. It was everything that was compounded on top of it politically, by this faction of the United States that's in power, right? I mean, it's like all of my heroes are dead and my enemies are in power. That old saying, it's a feeling of vulnerability, it's a feeling of frustration, and just so I totally get you almost at this point being speechless. So I don't know that there's a road forward, except to talk about it as some type of catharsis. You know what I mean? But I want you to get the last word, man. Whatever else you want to say.
Yeah, I wish I could have like a good uplifting one. I think one thing, so you said the actual events are bad enough, and of course, I mean, they obviously are. But of course, the actual events never. It happens once, but it lasts forever. Terrorism works, right? I mean, and I'm sure you must have, post Emanuel, you must have had this experience. I mean, it's none. We will never walk through the doors of a synagogue again without thinking about it.
Right.
We we were thinking about it before, right? There's been across the world, but the proximity. So it's there. So this terrorist has won to this extent that now every single time we walk through doors, that would never go away.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
But it's not going to, right? And then, I mean, this is something we've talked about in brief, but a privilege that American Jews have had for at least a generation, probably only a generation, but we have tended over the last generation to speak to our children, and in this timeline, I'm one of the children, of anti-Semitism as being something that was like a potential problem, but largely something more abstract, distant in the past or whatever.
Right.
And clearly that's not the conversation I'll be having with my children. And, I mean, I'm not going to speak for you. I'm sure you have this conversation.
No, I mean,
I'm sure you have.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to cut you off there. I got to cut you off because, damn, you just said a mouthful there. Like we've literally left a generation where maybe they had the conversation with us. Maybe they warned us. They probably did, but not in a fearful way of like, this is likely going to happen or this is what happened recently. Our parents were able to talk to us in a way that, we were naive. Maybe our parents kept us in a place of naivete because we dreamed things were better than what they really were. But for sure, the conversations that we're having with our children have to be distinctly different because communities, the world around us says, wake up. This is, maybe we were foolish forever thinking it was better, but it's sure as hell clear that it's bad right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that in the Jewish case, it was better. I mean, and hopefully, God willing, it will be better. But it's, I mean, put it this way: the sort of like, not to get too autobiographical, but the kind of very sort of like sophomore, kind of rudimentary anti-Semitic kind of teasing that I got as a kid back then, the whole point was to sort of like let it go because it's not, it's going to be fine. I don't know if I can have that attitude anymore.
Right.
Right. I mean, and it's different. I mean, like, I don't know. I get nervous about sort of cross-cultural comparisons when it comes to this stuff, and I certainly do not mean to equate in any way situations across different.
I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to mince those. You don't have to apologize for that because we know we know there are clear differences in your experience as being a Jewish American and me being a Black American. Even though we're comparing them in terms of ethnicity, we know all the layers here that we have to unpack to make this apples to apples comparison. Right? We're not blind to that, but just at the pure visceral feeling of it and the reality of being a target, right? Like we can get beyond the layers and the complexities and being accurate and being fastidious with how we make this comparison, right? We're targets, man. Right. You're a target and I'm a target. And our targets, like, you may not be targeted by the police the way that I'm targeted by the police, but you're targeted by a white nationalist the same way that I am. And if that shooter did not get access to a synagogue, if Dylan Roof didn't get access to a church, then we serve as substitutes for that class of hatred, right? It's coming from the same place. It has a hatred for Jewish people the same way it has a hatred for Black people, and so we're both targets. We can simplify it in that way and say that our communities are targeted by the same people,
and the people in charge don't pretty overtly don't give a fuck.
Yeah. And in fact, not only do they not give a fuck, they're exacerbating the situation.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And they'll be, and if they do it successfully, they'll stay in power.
Yeah. I'm going to throw my microphone at the computer because that's the part. That's the part.
Yeah.
And then if you want to just both of us be irritated even more, we have people who are ostensibly on our side of the equation who feel like, not confronting that head on is the strategy. Oh, yeah. That, that makes me throw in the towel and say all of my heroes are dead and my enemies are in power and my enemies are surrounding me. But Matt, rest assured, man. A lot of people who love you individually, my supporters who listen to you on a regular basis, and even the beautiful thing about my audience. And I go to church every Sunday now. I just went to church and did my part for a funeral for one of our fellow choir members. I go on a regular basis. But the beautiful thing about my audience is that it is very reflective of the fact that we have to coexist. Not the cliche that we can coexist and that we want to coexist, but it is reflective of the fact that we have to coexist because the atheists in my audience, I know that they're sending as much love to you and to your community as I am. And they would do the same for me, and the agnostics and the Muslims in my audience. And that's not a kumbaya statement. That's a statement of strength that we all have a common enemy that threatens our life, that threatens our lives, and threatens progress for humanity. And so if there's any solace in any of this, it's that there's a very diverse belief communities, very diverse communities of different and varying beliefs and no beliefs at all that stand with you against the type of appropriation that took place and against the type of violence that is targeted towards your community.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ben. I do appreciate the audience, and you're right. The willingness to hear people's different perspectives is, the most important thing we have. Yeah. We had a plan, me and you, to do a podcast on religion and politics. And first, it got delayed by a great thing. My daughter was born. Yeah. This week, it got pushed back by the opposite. But we'll do it, and I'm really looking forward to getting some feedback from the audience and engaging in this conversation more. Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, be well. Hug that baby extra tight, and give my best to all of your family, man. We'll speak soon.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.